Hey everyone, welcome back here to Bulletproof Selling. My name is Sean Rhodes, the Chief Sales Sergeant here at Bulletproof Selling and author of the book Bulletproof Selling, a guide for systemizing sales on the battlefield of business. Since day one here at Bulletproof Selling, we have been on air, online, in front of organizations, in front of audiences with just one message. And that message is that hope is not a sales strategy. Hope has a place in life. But what I saw for myself on the battlefield and what I've seen for myself over hundreds of thousands of salespeople in the last few years is that those relying on hope aren't achieving all they were meant to achieve. They're not becoming who they were meant to become. So from day one, we've been showing up here at Bulletproof Selling with guests, folks that are best-selling authors, Hall of Fame speakers, folks running sales organizations, folks running sales teams, folks helping sales teams grow, all for the express purpose of identifying where they have seen hope entering the plans of the people that they're working alongside. And then every single show, we create a system that you can use to remove that element of hope from your sales plan, no matter the size of your team or the size of your goals. Across all of the things that we have been able to cover here at Bulletproof Selling, the entire sales cycle has basically been hit. I mean, all the way from developing your ideal customer profile, generating calls, preparing for your meetings, driving more value in those meetings, putting folks deeper into the pipeline after the meetings. We've even got episodes on how to get paid faster after the sale, how to systemize every element of that. But there's one overarching thing that too many leaders don't take the time to do. And if you're listening to this at the end of the year or the beginning of the year, well, you are hitting us at the right time, because this is going to be one of those systems that you're going to want to map out and immediately implement on your team. What we're going to be talking about today, because it's the idea of not building a new system necessarily, but assessing holistically all of the things we've been doing, how those things have helped us achieve our goals, and of course, what we can keep doing that we might have started doing and not taken the time to capture. I see so many innovations lost on sales teams and in organizations because they don't take the time to ask, what have we started doing that's worth continuing? Because otherwise, somebody's just going to stop doing it, it's going to drop off, and we're going to be scrambling to wonder why our results are also declining. So today's guest, one of my favorite groups of people, a U.S. veteran, and more than that, another Marine. So we're going to make sure that we use very small words. I've asked him to prepare a box of crayons that he can chew on if he happens to get hungry during this meeting. But without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome onto the show someone that's going to discuss this holistic way of assessing systems, Mr. Kyle Sharpe. He is the president of Healthcare Logistics and a former Marine with the AAV. So Kyle, welcome, sir, to Bulletproof Selling.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. I really look forward to discussing this topic. It's a topic I often discuss with other organizations to see how we each do it in our own ways.
And if you happen to be catching us on the live stream, we have very similar backgrounds, Kyle and I, today. I've got a big American flag behind me. He's got a big American flag behind him. It's no guess what team that both Kyle and I play on or play for. We're here to grow organizations and make America a better place. So it's very cool to be here with you, Kyle. Again, we're going to use small words because of the Marine connection, but I'm curious to know, because so many folks tell me the military does nothing to prepare us for business or for civilian life in general. And yet here you are, former Marine, but yet you're the president of an entire company today. So walk me through that journey and what skill sets the Marine Corps gave you that you're able to apply today.
I would say, Sean, certainly the biggest one was mission accomplishment, right? Like no matter what happens, you have to complete the next evolution. There is always a next evolution. Even if it's not presented to you, it's still there somewhere. You just might have to figure out a little bit more where it is. So in my beginning days, it was a matter, I was the only salesperson that traveled for healthcare logistics. We call it HCL. So I was the only one, kind of that hot lead would come in. I'd get on the plane, get in my car and, go figure out what it was. And then, just that response of needing to be in person grew. So the team that traveled, we kind of had to develop that muscle, right? We went from being 100% inside catalog based. We would just send you samples to where the orders were getting larger. And, we just kind of discovered that if the customer is going to issue a PO that they could go out and buy a car with, because it was, $30,000. Well, they wanted somebody physically standing in front of them before they issued that PO. Makes sense. Big investment. You want to know that there was so anyway, started doing that. And then we had some gaps in our management team that really came out. Some people left, some people got moved to other departments. And then just kind of looked around, I wasn't even a manager then. And, I just submitted a plan up the chain, a rough draft, 4 pages, fill in the blanks. But hey, look, I see that there's these management vacancies. Here's how I believe the next step is. And then I looked around to like the actual managers at that time, or some of the more senior sales folk who had been there longer than me. And I really looked up to because they were successful. Said, hey, well, what plan did you submit? I'm like, oh, no, he told us about a plan. I go, well, you see these vacancies, you see, I mean, we just had a shakeup, nobody's telling us what the next step is. We should be kind of concerned. And when I figured out like nobody else submitted a plan, to me, it was a no-brainer that you just give that feedback about where do we need to go next. And then, parts of the plan were implemented. Other people, in the company were trying to figure out what to do with the sales department with this management void. And the fact that they had any document land on their desk as an arrow really helped shape what we do. They filled in the blanks. I got my first management position out of it. So I'm, oh, all right, cool. And then from there, it was just really a matter of success and really building success for everybody else on the team.
And this is something I know that we had to do in the Marines plenty of times. Even the small unit level, when your senior non-commissioned officer left or they had to go on leave, suddenly you're in charge. You can't just wing it that day because you're dealing with dangerous stuff, right? You're dealing with vehicles that could injure people. You're dealing with live ammunition. You have to have a plan. You got to build a plan. So I'm very sure that skill set, that mindset, if no plan exists, there's a vacuum. And we know as veterans, that vacuum has to be filled. There has to be a plan there. So we're not just winging it every single day. I know now, you get to talk to a lot of salespeople. You've got a couple dozen working in your company, management level over them. And I know you're still implementing plans every day. But I'm curious with the salespeople that you've got and the ones that you've been able to talk to in other organizations, where do you see them really dropping the ball when it comes to setting up a plan and then executing it? Where does that fall off? Is it just there's no plan at all? They're kind of winging it, sell more stuff? That's basically the only order they have? Or is it something deeper than that, something to do with the culture of the company?
Yeah, it certainly could be with the culture. There are some organizations that are, they'll just throw out a bunch of marketing and then they just answer the phone when it rings. If that works for them, if they don't really have any true metrics designed about what success is and it works for them, that's fine. Those organizations are still the same size with the same products that they were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay. If that works for them, that's fine. Or I will see that they have a plan, but they've never really formalized it, right? They've never really beat it up from 3 different directions. They didn't call in anybody from the outside or a different department at the very least to say, where are the gaps? Where isn't this going to work, right? And then, before you issue it, you give it to your team, your top management to say what isn't going to work. Or, hey, I left these gaps in here for you. Right. These are your, how, the next steps are up to you, but we have to define them. Right. So no formalized plan. Or the organizations I do see a formalized plan, they'll issue it in February or maybe the beginning of their fiscal year. But then bango, you ask about it 3 months later. Like, oh, yeah, I should probably check on that. Right.
Yeah, right. That was
Implementation of that plan has to be just absolutely ruthless. If you decided, I have 5 key categories every year that I want to see like ruthlessly worked on. Sometimes it's shrinking market, but I want a larger share of that shrinking market. I'm just kind of weird that way, right? Honestly, push out some of the other competitors. So that way, even though the market is shrinking, as a whole, my sales could be, hey, you know what, even the market's not going to evaporate in the next 20 years, but it is going to get smaller. But I can kind of create to be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. And that's not a lot of organizations do that, but that's a weird thing that I sometimes do. But anyways, you pick those 5 key objectives, you go after them and you keep going after them. You have metrics built around them. You have a reporting that comes back, but you can also build in flexibility in that this past year, I adjusted one of those 5 key metrics just 4 months into the year. We started on a very narrow path with this one very narrow sector that we were seeing just great growth in. We started pursuing that narrow sector and we were doing okay in it, but we were also gaining sales here. And, when we were pursuing this one route, we were gaining sales on other products. And it's like, okay, so then as soon as I expanded it to all products in that, family of products, then it started to really go up. So just being able to make that adjustment, realizing it, having that feedback loop,
Yeah.
So,
We'll talk
adjusting
about
and,
how to develop that more.
right.
Oh yeah, for
Because
sure.
if we
So
were to,
I'm curious, and you painted the picture of a leadership team that has a plan, and that's a beautiful picture to have. But my guess is a lot of the folks listening, because I get to talk to a lot of the folks that I work with, the salespeople that are out there every day on the front line, they may not be operating from a plan that's that built out, that's that ruthlessly implemented, and that's actually assessed. So if I'm a salesperson or I'm a manager, how do I know that I'm not operating from one of those types of plans? And it may not be up to me, right? Like this is something that you and I are going to discuss on the show today. This really needs to be owned by management and leadership. But if I'm on the front line, how do I know that I'm just hoping that things work out for me every day? Is it showing up at the office and sitting down at the desk and just figuring out, all right, I'm just going to attack some stuff without knowing what direction I'm going to be attacking in? How do I know that hope is really the basis of my operational day?
right. So there again, yeah, bringing that hope, kind of the hope in a sense rests on that plan. Is it if it's been thoroughly vetted, not just by, myself from on high with some,
Yeah.
magical set of numbers, but, I've got an outside advisory board, right? That outside advisory board, they are they are key customers of HCL, right? They are trusted customers of HCL that we also rely on for that honest feedback. And they might say, hey, look, I know you want to grow in that area, but I'm telling you, and, they'll give me maybe a piece of information I can't see from the inside, but they can see from the outside. Fantastic. And then, like I said, taking it to, my peers inside of the company, letting those managers have a say. But then the plan starts to certainly look a little bit different when it gets to the teams, right? Okay, how this sales team is going to implement it is most likely going to look different than how that sales team implements it. Is it a different part of the country? Is it a different set of customers? Is it timing of a year with, the federal agencies, that we have as customers? So then, as it goes down and it kind of morphs, it's a different plan. And then when it gets to the individual territories, of which there are teams that they really look nothing like what the overarching plan is. And I will share the overarching plan with everybody so they can understand, oh, this is why but like I said, if I were to just flop this plan down like I did the first year, what do I do? Right. So there again, that's where you're talking about hope. Hope goes back to, I hope this plan works, but also knowing and realizing that this plan has been thoroughly vetted, beat up many different directions. Your manager has had a very big say in it themselves in how it got to what the team is going to do. And then even how this is going to be implemented, I call daily action, a daily plan for weekly success to build your quarter, right? Don't even worry about the month, worry about the quarter. That's how our incentive is based. But, knowing that plan, has come from some of our largest customers and their needs, reviewed by senior management, not that we're that great, but that the other departments are going to supply that support, and that even their individual plan, to support these areas, it's 2/3 them, right? What do you want to do? And that even this overarching plan is only going to be about, approximately 8 hours a week out of your entire week that we're asking you to support the yearly plan. The rest of the time, you are dealing with customers' current needs, travel, everything else that needs to go into handling a territory.
And we've talked a lot about the importance of a plan. I love the idea you have of, if I'm not sitting down every day as a salesperson with a daily plan to reach that weekly goal, which takes me to that monthly goal or that quarterly goal, that means there probably isn't a strong enough plan in place. But I know that the idea of assessing a plan, because this almost has to be done before we build a plan. There are elements of what we're already doing we may want to retain, but there's probably a lot that we're not doing that we need to really look at for the next quarter or the next year. So let's build a system, Kyle, for how do we debrief what happened before? How do we decide what needs to change, or how do we decide what do we need to retain? And this is something that you and I are very familiar with because we had to do it on the battlefield in the Marine Corps. But for a lot of salespeople out there, it may be a new process. So I want you to understand, if you're listening and you're a salesperson that's on the front line, we're going to train you how to debrief your own plan if you're the one left responsible for making it. Or you hear this and you're like, Sean, this sounds great, but man, I can't, I don't have the authority to do all this. Hey, send this episode up to your management team because they're the ones that do have the authority. So Kyle, you've listened to enough of our episodes. I know you're a fan of the show, but like every system we had in the Marine Corps helped us trim a little more hope away from our operations. Hey, every new system in sales does the same thing. So we use this acronym TRIM here at Bulletproof Selling to build out our systems. It's the first time we've ever attacked how do we actually assess the results of a plan. This is going to be fun. So if I'm a mid-level manager or I'm an executive, let's say I'm a VP of sales, it really falls on me to do this, but an individual can do it as well at their level. Where does the system trigger for me? Should it trigger at the end of the year, at the end of a quarter? Should I do it when I see that I'm not on track to meet my goals? When is a good time to just, get some time on my calendar to assess the plan that I've been using to make sure it's still going to work for me in the future?
Sure. Yeah, feedback. If you don't know what the success is, how do you know what's successful? So I have feedback loops that are monthly, metrics that are reported on, for myself, those 5 key areas I want to work on. There are some hard, defined metrics. Is it sales dollar, customer engagement, whatever that hard number is, that it does come to myself, but it comes to everybody involved. How did we do this month? And we view it. But then at the end of every quarter, we start asking questions about, maybe a week before the quarter is over, how did we get to this number? Whether it's a good number, a bad number, how did we get this number? So that way, at the end of the quarter, we review as a team of managers, how did this number happen? Good, bad, or, just on track? And then the result of that conversation goes right back to the team to adjust anything that needs to be adjusted. Sometimes you can just go, that was a swing and a miss. We're not even going to talk about that one anymore. That just, yeah, okay. Good job, guys. Thank you. And that's okay. But to recognize that sooner rather than later, or does something need to evolve and change in which you can share the success of this team? How did this team get this number? Well, everybody else was just on par. Let's share that success, right? Or even, you have enough of these quarterly meetings. Yesterday, we just had our year-end meeting. Yeah, I know it's only December 15th, but if, your chart should be good enough to project what you're going to do the last, 2 weeks of the 52-week year, what worked and what didn't. So we were really going over those even just yesterday. So that way we can make some final decisions to roll out the first week or 2 of January. And a big part of that is, hey, what was going great this year that we would just be fools not to continue into next year? It's not always out with the old and in with the new, but we identified 2 areas that, hey, manager, what do you want to see your team? They're like, we did so great in these 2 areas. Like, we want to keep going. Hey, fine. The numbers are all rocking and rolling. The team's engaged. They're educated on those. They want to take it to more customers. I would be foolish to stop that. Meanwhile, there's some other product groups that we say, you know what? We did good on them, but it's time to replace these 3 objectives with 3 new objectives. So I guess that's where the feedback loop is, viewing it on a very regular basis, a monthly basis. So you could do it even potentially weekly on a smaller team, but on the scale that I'm working on, monthly is completely adequate. So decide how often you need to view it. Sometimes daily might be too much, right? You're chasing the number more than necessarily the outcome. But, you're viewing that information regularly. But what's even more important is that you're discussing it with relevant parties at a regular interval as well.
So you've actually you've moved ahead because you're very familiar with this methodology. You're already deeper into the system than we got. So the trigger element, I love this. Look at
Mhm.
it monthly, but it doesn't mean you have to act on it monthly. But you've
Correct.
got to have your eyes on that number, just like we did in the military. I need to know, is this train about to go off of the rails? Because I don't want to wait for the end of the quarter to begin fixing a train that's about to crash into the mountain. If that
Right.
can be done earlier, if there's that big of a need, that's why you look at those larger numbers monthly. But on a quarterly basis, you've moved into the repeatable element of this methodology real good, which is the repeatable part. You've said first at the end of the quarter, look at where you're at and ask, hey, how did we get there? Whether that number is good, bad, or average, to look at it. How did this happen? This is something that most teams don't take the time to do. Second question, or second thing you said to do was, hey, if you're above number in any area, like we just blew that goal out of the water, let's ask how that happened, why did it happen, and what can we do to share that with the other teams so that they don't have to luck into it themselves like this one team obviously did, or they just had a couple of really high performers. Great. Let's download that high performance, systemize it, train it, figure out how other teams can access it. The third thing you said was, let's ask what's going well this year that we should continue into the following year. What new things did we try or begin doing that are really getting great results? And the fourth part of this repeatable system for assessing the plan that happened, assessing the results that happened, and building a new plan, a better one for the future, is for the areas that are no longer serving us, serving the team, serving the company. Let's talk about replacing them, giving the room, because we all only have so much bandwidth. If there are some areas that are no longer serving us, let's get them off the table, figure out how we can expand into places where we can better serve our customers. So that's a great repeatable element for debriefing what had just happened. Now let's move into the I in trim, because this is an area we had to be really spun up on in the military as well, which was improvement. By the nature of this system, we're going to be improving our plan. So I want to talk about improving the way we assess our plans, improving the way we assess our results. How am I going to do this? And you can tell me whether it should be done quarterly, annually, what this looks like for you, for making the way that we assess and improve better. Should that be done based on maybe the conversations you have with your board of advisors, based on what's going on in the market, based on the size or the composition of the team? How should we be improving how we assess results?
I would say a lot of that at that point, the outside advisors gave, the initial input, unless there's something really drastic, like you're missing your mark extremely significantly. That might not necessarily need to be engaged, but assessing like what is going on in the market, right? What are the competitors doing, right? What is the funding looking like in that market, right? Is it because we can tell that this segment of the market, like, hey, has had some very heavy venture capital pumped into it, and so it's the next area of development? Or for us in healthcare, hey, when the COVID emergency was over, a lot of funding disappeared for a lot of our organizations. So we had to adjust, who we were selling what to, if that makes sense, right? These large amounts of disposables were gone, but now large segment of our customers were looking for efficiencies. What do we have that we can now offer as efficiencies? But he was on that feedback loop, or how to adjust market conditions, what is actually happening, to really the elements you can't control, right? We can't control our customers' funding, right? I can't control my competitors' marketing, but I can dodge and weave with them.
Yep, absolutely. And that's something that we did really, really well in the military, which was taking the initiative on change. So not waiting for our environment to change before we made improvements, because the stakes were very high for us. Like if the environment caught up to us, it meant people weren't coming home, because that meant our enemy was
Right.
developing better tactics. So for us,
Right.
we have every single mission, it's like, how do we make the next one even better? And we make
Right.
sure we do that, not just wait for it to happen. So that's a great way to improve. Let's move into the M in trim here, which is the measurement piece of this, because I'm going off of debriefing my past results, looking at what we need to improve, what we need to retain, what we need to dive into more of or expand into. What am I going to measure to make sure that this is a good use of me and my team's time? Because this is taking up time of managers, it's taking up time of executives. We're probably going to peel some other people from different departments into this type of a meeting. That's a lot of manpower and woman power for sure. So what do I measure to make sure that this is a good use of our time? Is it just growth in the market for the next quarter? Is it how many improvements we make? Is it, the number of customers we serve? What am I measuring to make sure this system is a good use of our time as a company?
Well, the infamous answer, Sean, it depends.
Good.
There we go. There are, some of my elements that I put a big focus on that, it's just straight up sales dollars, right? Let's see growth, right? Just the whole show me the money approach. Like everybody in the world envisions sales. Other times, not so much. It's like, hey, how many customers can we just get to buy this? Because some products, once you get it, once you kind of get your foot in the door with the product or one particular product group, it's going to grow. So how many customers can we just get engaged? Right. Because for a while we have some amazing software systems along with our disposables. And we were just, at first we were just trying, how many systems or how many customers can we get this one system implemented in? Turned out that was totally wrong, because getting a customer interested versus implemented were two different things. What other projects they have going on, what's their budget like, versus if we just said, hey, as sales, we can control how many demos we're giving to interested customers. So we put that. So once we started increasing, the qualified leads getting to a demo, overall success went up versus just focusing on how many systems do we have implemented. Or sometimes, unfortunately, there's products that customers really aren't extremely loyal to if they need it, kind of like a gallon of milk, right? If you need a gallon of milk, oh, hey, the milk is so much better over there. No, it's not. Yeah, you don't even care if it's 50 cents more if it's on your way home, right? You get the gallon, the whatever supply it is you always need at the most convenient place. So on an item like that, we just might measure total number of units sold. Doesn't necessarily matter to what customer group, just total number of widgets out the door. So there again, what is success going to be?
And I like that. As part of this system, even you could ask for the next quarter, for the next year, how do we define success?
Yes.
Because if we're using last year's numbers or the numbers we had 10 years ago, changing markets, changing industries, changing composition of your team, all of that is going to affect what success looks like. So don't operate off of last year's or last decade's goals. So we've got this great system for actually assessing results, Kyle, that any management team can do, but even an individual salesperson can do if they don't have that structured leadership. But if you're listening to this and you don't have this type of system going on in your company, forward this episode to your management team. I know Kyle and I would appreciate that, because it'll just make us all better as individuals and as salespeople. So Kyle, if someone's, really digging on this, they say, man, that's a great philosophy you have of engaging your people, making sure they're showing up with a daily goal that leads to a weekly result. How do they find out more about healthcare logistics, your company? I know you're expanding territories. You're going to be looking for new salespeople pretty soon. How do they get in touch with you?
GoHCL.com is our website. I have a profile and a bio. I'm at Sharpe, SHARPE, at GoHCL.com. I always love benchmarking, discussing with other companies about what does your success look like? What are you seeing? Even if it seems like a market that's not related, at the end of the day, all humans are connected one way or the other. So I always love talking to other businesses about what they're seeing, what they're doing, how they're investing, back into their own organization. So I really do welcome anybody that wants to discuss defining success.
Well, if you've got an open invitation to talk to somebody like Kyle with the experiences he's had in the company that he runs, take him up on that for sure. For all of us here at Bulletproof Selling, if you're catching this on the live stream, make sure you're subscribing to that YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere that podcasts can be found, definitely leave us a review and let salespeople know that are just cruising for the next great sales podcast that this is one that will actually help, because it doesn't just talk about high-level strategies. It's the tactics, it's the systems that any of us can use to remove hope from how we sell so that we can serve more. Kyle, thanks so much for your service, brother, and showing up today, giving back to the sales community. Let's get out there and make selling bulletproof.
All right. Thank you, Sean.